is risen. Jesus is alive. So now what, right? 500 plus people saw him alive, but now what do they do? Matthew kind of picks this up here at the end of Matthew in chapter 28. He kind of almost abruptly ends his book. He ends it, though, with what might be considered some of the most weighty words of Jesus. Your mission is found here. My mission is found here. We refer to it as the Great Commission. Check it out with me in verse 18 through 20 of chapter 28. And Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. All right. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. You see the Trinity there. Teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Now, if I was to try to summarize the mission that we just received from Jesus here, not only those guys, but a mission directly given to you and to me, a mission that the whole church is meant to walk out together, it would be this. We call it two words. It's one word in the Greek. Make disciples. Now, why would I say that? That is the central thing. That's the takeaway of all those other words. It's because it is the central verb, and it is therefore the central command of this, yes, indeed, a command from our King Jesus. Meaning this, that what we're going to hear should be received with a bit of weight. What we're going to hear, this great commission must be approached with a sense of submission, with a sense of instruction, and a sense of marching orders from our King to us. Now, to fully understand that term, make disciples, we need to look at this concept through the eyes of the people that are hearing it. You see, they're very familiar with the concept, and I would suggest sometimes we're blurred when it comes to that concept of making disciples. Making disciples, or metatheusete, is to make disciples and or to disciple. Okay, it's almost like a two-pronged approach. It's two sides of the same coin. Make a disciple and disciple. If we think of it from our terminology that we attach this, it would be evangelism and discipleship. They're both wrapped up in that concept of making disciples. They're two sides of the same coin. Specifically, this verb can be broken down. This is the imperative verb form of mathetes. This is a word that means disciple. It means one. That means one committed to being trained or being a learner or a follower of a rabbi in particular. One that learns by practice. Okay, and in the goal of being acquiring a custom or a habit. Back then, the term disciple, it was used like we use the term Christian. It was synonymous with those who were a part of the church. They were the disciples of Jesus. Culturally, this word was used of those who sat at a rabbi's feet, who learned from the rabbi, who absorbed what the rabbi was doing. Like we might think of an apprentice today. They adopted the rabbi's ways. They mirrored his life and his teaching. The original discipleship, in other words, is something that was not just taught, but it was also caught. For example, a comment or a compliment that you could give to a disciple back in the day went something like this. Man, you've got the dust of your rabbi all over you. Now to us, that would be like, great, I'm dirty. But to them, that was a phrase that was suggesting that this person had been following their rabbi so closely that they could see the likes of the rabbi all over them. His very imprint was upon them. Now you got to remember, this is exactly what the disciples who are receiving this message have come to associate with Jesus themselves. They were disciples of Jesus for the last 3 years. So when they're hearing this, they're hearing it with a sense of clarity that we lack. They're hearing it with a sense of simplicity that maybe we don't understand. They hear it as, well, I got to multiply me. I got to make another me. I got to do what Jesus did to me. Now, as we consider that definition, that this idea of the dust on me, being so close with people, and we consider our commission to make disciples, I got to give a little time out for us Westerners, okay? Us Westerners, if we're really honest, we struggle with that definition, that understanding that these disciples had of what discipleship is. Largely in part because of our culture, or maybe our church culture that we've grown up with. In the West, we like our box-driven logic. This goes in this box, this goes in this box. Everything's tidy, it doesn't intermingle. Think of the way we think of discipleship and evangelism. We put them in separate boxes, separate classes, separate majors, separate ministries. Even some churches say we're all about evangelism, and some churches we're all about discipleship. What's going on here is they're abandoning the original definition of make disciples. It's two sides of the same coin. It's my view that every ministry, therefore, in the church ought to make disciples, ought to have a balanced approach to both, ought to be making disciples, training disciples to make disciples. You see it? They go together, and every single believer needs to be well-rounded in both, even as Jesus' own disciples were. He discipled them while they did ministry and making more disciples. Do you see it? But we Westerners, we like our efficiency. We try to take discipleship and make it something we can mass produce. We prefer the Henry Ford version of the Great Commission. We consider it the great head count of making converts instead of making disciples. We've been measuring the commission by butts and seats for years, ignoring metrics that have to do with making, maturing, or multiplying disciples. Friends, Henry Ford was great at what he did, but he was not a disciple maker. Jesus was a disciple maker. We cannot rely on large group methodologies or flashy, systematic programs to make and develop devoted disciples. It's not the way that Jesus modeled it here. You want to make cars, fine, follow Henry Ford. Right? But you want to make disciples, at least as defined here, we need to follow Jesus' methodology. Sure, use modern day tools, but the mission isn't a something. It's a someone. I mean, programming is great for bringing people together, but too often we've treated it as the end in and of itself, the something that we're chasing. We instead ought to be chasing the someone. The program's method and means is to bring people together to invest in people. We have to hit that target, church. Can I be frank? This is an observation over all of my ministry years, indeed growing up in the church myself. If you really consider, if you talk to people like I have in the church and you ask them, have you ever been intentionally taken under the wing of another person? Have you ever been intentionally, life on life, discipled? You're going to find that the majority of the people haven't. It means that their butts have been sitting in seats, they've been counted, their heads been counted, but nobody has discipled them like Jesus is talking about here, and that breaks my heart. The truth is that we have sacrificed so many in our pursuit of the many. Friends, it's time the church stops thinking in terms of the world's way of doing things and thinking that that's somehow smarter than the way Jesus did it. We need to get back to life on life disciple making. But that's scary to us in the West because we like our predictable, we like our insulated, we like our individualized versions of Christianity. The idea of making disciples, at least living alongside a bunch of dudes like Jesus did, that seems really messy to us. It is a messy business. Let's be frank. It's you got to get into the nitty gritty. It becomes unpredictable. Life on life style ministry is not something that would be that would be conducive to arm's length relationships that we tend to like because they're more predictable. Should you follow his means for his mission, friend, you will get dirty. You'll probably get frustrated. People will probably rub you the wrong way. You think it was easy being amongst the disciples of Jesus? They probably had tons and tons of issues in the process. But that, my friends, was a process that Jesus chose. Devoting to a small group of people and living alongside them isn't a clean or individualized process. Developing an intimate relationship with three, like Jesus did, is not a safe place to be. It's an uncomfortable, it's a vulnerable place to be. Think about it. As a Westerner, that idea of discipleship, is that something that you are drawn to? Is that something that you have done before? Has somebody been in your kitchen? Have you invited people alongside you in ministry? Are you hearing them in their vulnerability? Are they hearing you in yours? Are they witnessing your very way of life? Does somebody have your dust on them? The truth is, making another you is a dirty job, but the retirement's well worth it. Let's keep going. This mission is later specified. Let's break down how it's specified. You're going to see three words jump out at me, and they should jump at you. Going, baptizing, and teaching. First is going, all right? It may show up as go in your text, but it's probably better translated going, all right? This is the idea or word for moving destinations. It's an intentional action of having moved. To go or going means that you have been sent, friends. He's got to go therefore, all right? Since he's got all the authority, he's telling you to be in motion. You've been sent. There is an implied activity to that word. This verbiage does not allow for laziness. It does not allow for consumerism amongst the disciples of Christ. Doesn't allow for that. Doesn't allow for armchair quarterbacks. They need not apply. They need not be calling themselves disciples. This means that your action, friends, is an anticipation of Jesus. The question then is, are you going? Are you in the game? Is your time devoted? Is your talent committed to the process? Is your treasure contributed to the process? Friends, if this is your church, you'll be asked to put skin in the game. You'll be asked to be a part of our mission of making disciples. So expect to serve the body. Expect to share Jesus. Expect to open your life to other people and to do life on life ministry. Expect to be asked to invest in another person. Expect to break bread, open Bibles, pray with persistence for others, be in a partnership and experience a fellowship with people as we make disciples of Jesus. It's a messy ministry, but we're going to be committing to being all about it. Friends, that is the one another's. Notice, though, we go to who? We go to the nations. The ethnos, the people groups, if you will. We must spread this discipleship to the ends of the earth. We need to get more people in the next town, more people in the next country, more people to the ends of the earth to be disciples of Jesus Christ. It needs to spread across the globe. We need to be fruitful and multiply in this ministry. The disciples took this quite seriously and quite literally. They went to Europe. They went to Africa. They went to India in their lifetimes. Would we be so bold? Lord, send some from our church, please. I, for one, am thankful someone went to my ancestors before me. I may not be believing here today if they didn't take this seriously. The question then is, who will be thankful for your contribution, your participation to this mission? Who will invite you into their heavenly home with thanksgiving because you are a part of the ministry that led to their salvation? as a church, we support local and foreign missionaries. We're going to get into talking a lot about that in the next series. Suffice to say, we're going to be investing in those relationships. Suffice to say, we're going to be asking you to invest your time, talent, and treasure in making disciples to the ends of the earth. The next word that you're going to see here is this word baptizing, or baptizo. This is to dip or immerse. This is culturally almost always associated with dunking somebody out of the water as a sign of spiritual renewal. To disciples, this was the original moment of confessing Christ. They didn't lead people in a prayer of salvation. If one believed, they took them and they dunked them. To them, this was the obedience 101 moment, all right? This is their first act of faith. To disciples, it was and is a deep and meaningful symbol. It's an association with Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. It's your public profession of following Jesus and joining the church. It's a statement of being dead to one's old ways and alive to following Jesus Christ, and ultimately welcoming accountability with that statement. The question then, friend, is this: have you been baptized? Now, I'm not talking about has someone baptized you. I'm asking, when you believed, when you chose to follow Jesus, did you get in the water? Did you associate with his life, his death, his burial, his resurrection? Did you make that choice? Now, you might have varying philosophies, theologies about that, but my encouragement to you is consider this text. Consider all the New Testament texts. Not church history. I'm talking the Bible. Have you wrestled with it? Jesus is calling you to that obedience. We are to baptize those who have believed. No matter where you land on that, I encourage you, be convinced with your stance, but make sure it's biblical and you obey Christ in your convictions. Next word you're going to see there is teaching, didasko. This is a cause, direct, teach to the point of learning. That's what it means, to cause, direct, or teach to the point of learning. Notice here, there is an I, there's a you, and there is a them involved in this. Okay? Teach them all that I have, commanded you. All right. So there's this pass it on kind of methodology. We see the apostles did this. All the disciples did this after them. In Acts 2, verse 42, people devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. You see them? They're passing the word of God on. In 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2, Paul is saying to Timothy, hey, pass on what I taught you to other teachers who will teach other people also. There's 4 layers of passing on teaching there. Now, notice the type of teaching we're talking about. We're not talking about just information gathering here. We're teaching to observe. Observe all that I have commanded you. This word observe means to keep one's life intact, in line with the teaching. In other words, the preaching prescribed here is application-oriented. The teaching that we're to share is to be applied. This goes with James 1:22. Don't deceive yourselves by merely listening to the word. Do what it says. Do what it says. Indeed, knowledge without application isn't just useless. It actually is something we are responsible before God for, according to Luke chapter 12. See, friends, the point of teaching is to bring about change in one's obedience, indeed allegiance to Christ. To affect their loves of God, their love of other people, the desires of their heart, to call them to a life that's lived out in a manner worthy of the greatness of the gospel that we have received, to call them to walk in step with the Spirit and the power that He has given us, to walk following Jesus, His life, His ways, His teaching, ultimately to purify yourself in anticipation of your union with Christ. 1 John chapter 3, verse 3. Then notice how he ends off, the mission source. I'm with you. I'm with you always. To the end of the age. Behold, this is important. This is the main ingredient. I'm with you. Jesus just didn't send 11 dudes and he said, hey, good luck. No, he said, I'm going to be with you. Jesus didn't just command, he empowered. In fact, these guys that were hiders had turned into heroes because of the fact that His Spirit would be in them and His Spirit is in us as we obey this too. To the end. To the end. There is not a moment when He abandons you on this journey of obedience. He started you off and He will see you through. But friends, the King is coming back. He's returning soon. The question then is this: will you be found ready? Will you be found as a faithful servant or an unfaithful servant? Will you be found as an obedient servant or a distracted servant? Will you be found as a working servant or a lazy servant? He's given us a mission. He's told us to go. So now what? Now what? Well, the mission summary, the mission, now what? You've got this command from the king. Is your response going to be, so what, or now what? Disciple, you have been sent. You have been sent. I plead with you, make a move into obedience to this command. Maybe it's just, hey, I need to get baptized, or maybe it's I need to join this group of disciples, this church as a member. I need to get into a small group and start doing messy life with other people, whether it's a men's group, women's group, or youth group. We want you alongside one another. Or maybe you need to just commit to the mission in general. Maybe you need to move your chips in, open your calendar up, offer your skill sets to the mission, offer a bit of more of your budget to contribute to the mission. Friends, Jesus rose. Jesus ascended. And Jesus is coming back. The question that remains is, will we be ready? As those who have been commissioned by him, will we be found as people who have been faithful while he's been absent? I don't know about you, but I hope that we can be a faithful and urgent church. I want to be a part of a church that's in the mix, getting dirty, sweaty, leaning into the tape when he returns, and it's coming soon. I want to be found doing the discipleship like Jesus did it. Either way I slice it, I know I'm on the clock. Because friends, it was written and he came. It was written and he died. It was written and he rose. It was written and he's coming again soon. And friends, he had this written by Matthew, that not only we might be about his business, but we might make sure others are ready for the day that he returns too. But there's a now what that remains. Now what is your life going to be all about? Let's be all about Jesus.